It was a beautiful morning. Sun was shining brightly on 6 August 1945. People were busy in their daily routine in the Hiroshima city of Japan. The World War II had entered in its final days. Suddenly sirens were blown as loud as the sun was bombarding its rays on the city. It was expected as routine air raid from the United States' lead Allies force during the World War II. But this time, it was atomic bomb attack by the US Air Force. 3 days later, the city of Nagasaki of Japan was met with the same fate. The bombings of the two cities killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people instantly, most of whom were civilians, and destroyed most of the infrastructure of the cities. It remained the only use of nuclear weapons in an armed conflict till date. Japan surrendered to the Allies' forces led by United States on 15th of August 1945, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki. After the defeat of Japan in World War II, the United States led the Allies in the occupation and rehabilitation of the Japanese state. Between 1945 and 1952, the U.S. occupying forces enacted widespread military, political, economic, and social reforms. Before we proceed, kindly return the favor and give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe and activate the bell notification feature to stay up to speed with all we have in store for you. The first official Japanese economic white paper, published in 1956, declared that the post-war era was over. Devastated Japan now finally successfully recovered by 1955. The white paper argued that the growth through recovery is over. The growth from now should be supported by modernization. The most important reform carried out by the occupation was the establishment of a new constitution. Many political parties emerged in the early days of post-war Japan, but broadly speaking, there were anti-communist, capitalist-oriented parties, social democratic parties. Today, Liberal Democratic Party is in government in Japan. Japan unconditionally surrendered on August 14, 1945, with World War II costing the country an estimated 2.6 to 3.1 million lives and 56 billion USD. Though Japan was left with almost nothing, their economy recovered at an incredible speed. Known as the Japanese economic miracle, Japan experienced rapid and sustained economic growth from 1945 to 1991, the period between post-World War II and the end of the Cold War in 1989. The real growth rate was positive until 1973, and increased for 20 consecutive years. In less than 10 years, Japan's economy was growing at a peak rate last observed in 1939, with the economy growing 2 times faster than the pre-war standard every year past 1955. There are 4 main factors that allowed for this super rapid growth: technological change, accumulation of capital, increased quantity and quality of labor, and increased international trade. Through strategic planning and cooperation by firms, individuals, and the government, Japan manipulated these factors to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. Though it has been 77 years since the end of World War II, many elements of Japan's economic recovery remain relevant to our society and can be applied to countries that have recently emerged from conflict. After the war, Japan had lost more than a quarter of its industrial capacity and was only left with over-depreciated capital stock that had no use. This allowed Japan to adopt an abundance of new technologies without having to wait for assets to be fully depreciated, fueling Japan's voracious appetite to start fresh and innovate. Several government policies favoring technological changes were implemented. The government aggressively used expansionary monetary policy so that growing industries had access to low-cost funds. Interest rates were rigid and closely monitored. The government also rewarded growing businesses with generous depreciation provisions and tax deductions. Large, more rapidly growing corporations had lower tax rates than smaller, slower growing firms. Personal income taxation was also slowed through partial exemption of interest and dividend incomes from taxation. Foreign countries greatly influenced and inspired the creation of new technologies. The Japanese took these new technologies they imported and improved it themselves, making the technology an estimated 20% more efficient. In order to import and implement the new technologies, the Japanese concentrated their capital into investing in rapidly growing manufacturing industries. At the time, the returns of these investments were high because the marginal productivity of capital was so high. In order to balance these large investments and avoid extremely high inflation, there was also a high rate of personal saving. The increase in quantity and quality of labor also greatly contributed to Japan's success, with the National Bureau of Economic Research estimating that it accounted for nearly 30% of the post-war Japanese growth. As people returned from war, there was a large increase in labor, allowing for wages to rise less than labor productivity in the 1950s. Even in the 1960s, productivity kept pace with wage increases, giving firms the ability to be efficient and grow. Labor also moved from low productivity sectors, such as agriculture and forestry, to high productivity sectors such as aviation, automobile, and electronics. A key element to the Japanese economic miracle was the keiretsu. Keiretsu were very large business groups that linked banks, trading companies, and industrialists through ownership or stock and long-standing exclusive relationships. Their mere size gave them the financial strength and connections they needed to outperform their domestic and foreign rivals, aggressively gaining market share in high-growth sectors with long-term potential. The government also worked in their favor, implementing policies that would minimize any competition for the firms. The workplace culture of keiretsu played a large role in its success, because it improved the quality of labor. The Japanese business environment was extremely competitive, and all companies went to great lengths to keep up with one another. Japan's exports grew rapidly after the war, boosting the economy. By providing tax deductions for overseas sales expenditures and preferential loans, the government was able to lower the prices of exports, making them relatively cheaper than other countries. The single most important factor in international trade that allowed Japan to stay ahead of its competitors was its ability to change what they were exporting every couple of years. Due to increased efficiency and corporations' ability to keep up with changes in the international trading stage, Japan was able to provide goods that were in the most demand, increasing exports and thus real economic growth. Today, Japan is the third largest economy of the world and already shaping up to be a consequential role in the region and wider global stage. Hiroshima will be hosting the G7 Leaders Summit as Japan takes over the G7 presidency for the year. Opportunities for closer cooperation with allies and partners glimmer on the horizon. The economy struggles to gain momentum coming out of a prolonged COVID-19 pandemic, and energy hikes have fueled inflation. But the country that could rise up from the ashes can overcome any challenge it faces. Most war-stricken countries can learn from Japan for their economic recoveries. A country that was destroyed by the flames of war has become one of the world's most important economic and political hub by giving the birth of what we can call the economic miracle. And now, let us hear from you in the comments section below. Keep in mind that more videos will be up soon. So, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date with new video uploads. Also, sharing indicates you want to see our content reach a wider audience. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.